Welcome, Red Spotters, to another audio commentary on our ongoing coronavirus-sponsored audio commentary series here for our network. I'm your host today, Alexis J. Soto, and I'm joined by David Francisco. David, here we have another audio commentary. Are you up for this?
Oh, yeah.
Because, the film we're doing today is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which came out in 2018. And right off the bat, these fucking, opening credits right here.
Oh.
You just, and I think you had this feeling too, right? Where, okay, what the fuck are we about to watch?
I had that from the trailers, really.
Right.
I mean, oh my gosh, this part right here, I thought it was hilarious. That comic brand thing.
Yeah, it is just unlike any other comic book movie. And maybe what is so, we'll talk about many different, parts about the movie in terms of the characters, the voice actors, the story elements, the animation. But I think one of the first things you are just so immediately captured by is the look and the style, in that this is the first animated movie that has this style of animation. No other animated movie has had this style of animation. Oh god, by the way, this is oh my god. Yeah, we'll get back to the animation. I want to mention that part which we just saw. So we're opening the movie. They throw a comic book at you. It's almost kind of meta in the sense, because it's kind of recapping all of the pop culture things you know about this character, including a lot of, famous moments from other Spider-Man movies. And I was listening to the commentary, as I do for, to prepare for our own commentaries, by Phil Lord and the other co-directors. And they were saying that early moment, which almost got cut, by the way, that moment of Peter Parker. By the way, this movie is moving so fast for me to catch up with it. I'm just so sorry.
Yeah,
but because so many great things are happening. But to focus on what I was saying about that moment where they're basically making fun of the reaction and how some people really hate that moment from Spider-Man 3, emo Peter Parker dancing and everything. Which almost got cut. They were saying it was really crucial for that to stay in the movie, because that was the first real big joke, and people were laughing loudly at it at the theater. And it's it was really there to prepare you that this is going to be a comedy. Or that the comedy in this is going to be really good. And that may be, the heart is front and center. But the comedy of this is also key to selling you on what we're watching here.
No, yeah. This was just kind of moving fast pace right off from the beginning, just telling you exactly what this movie is going to be. And it's so good. And for the animation, actually, I remember Phil Lord and Chris Miller, when they were asked to make this movie, they really didn't want it.
No, they were no, could we? Why would we?
Yeah, and then to kind of get out of it, they basically told the studio an impossible task, and which is, we want to make this as accurate, as comic book accurate as possible, at least the animation style. And they expected to be the studios to be you know what, we'll just take a different direction, sorry. But no, they were just go ahead, let's do it, whatever you want. And they were just in it right there and then. I thought that was a amazing piece of information for this movie, and also just a great thing for the studios to just let them do whatever they want, really.
It is remarkable, especially with a studio with a reputation as Sony, in terms of being one of the more studios to willfully meddle and interfere with many of the creative decisions in the films themselves. It's just, the whole idea of an animated Spider-Man movie had apparently been around for a long, long time, long before the MCU Sony deal was made. and it always just felt like a cash grab. But I mean, look at what we're just watching right now, not just in terms of the look of it, but just the scenes and the characters. Like, already we're like, what, 5 minutes into this movie, and I'm already like really, really liking Miles Morales as like a really good character, that I'm already on his side. And you know, in reference to the animation, it really came out at the perfect time, because, you know, a lot of animated movies have just copied the whole Pixar look of it, and they all just kind of, you know, look the same after a while. But this movie is so helped, not just by looking different, but when I mentioned at the top of how it looks and feels like the most comic book-y kind of movie, that is because the animation that we're looking at most lends itself to basically feel like as if you were reading a comic book. Even how they move and everything, you know?
Oh, I know. It's so great. No, I remember this movie. This movie should have gotten like Best Picture nomination.
Oh yeah,
because it really kind of pushed the boundaries of animation, just from adding 3D effects with 2D effects, but also changing the way we see depth within a movie. So like I'm sure you can even see it here, just kind of like getting that almost like a 3D look, the color separating from some of the characters. When I saw it, I was kind of like, oh my god, this is so amazing. How could you have thought of this?
It's just visually striking. I mean, I also do think, and I do believe some people were bringing it up at the point that this should have been a contender for best visual effects. Even if it's an animated movie, I mean, VFX is animation, just for those who are not aware. But I mean, this is the medium that we're looking at this movie. And, you know, just in the, like how you mentioned, just the subtleties in how the characters interact and move. It's not this kind of animation, and I'm not even sure it does. I'm sure it does have a name. I just don't know, you know, because it's so new, what we're latching on and calling it to, like, you know, like a different kind of animation is stop motion, which is what Leica Animation Studios does. And there's some influences, I think, from stop motion in terms of how certain characters move, but there's just more to it than that. In how, you know, to explain all of what we're seeing here, we have the first interaction between Miles and Spider-Gwen. It is an interesting decision to go with Miles Morales, and I think one that paid off in spades. You know, it's not just it's not just to have like the token, like, oh, the first black Spider-Man or whatever. I mean, this was a fully established character in the comics, so you know, before, you know, making this movie, which apparently some people were not aware of, and it pissed people off that they were making a Miles Morales Spider-Man movie, which they can go fuck themselves.
People were pissed off of making a colored Spider-Man in the comics.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I can imagine.
Literally the man who, like, sort of put the idea out there, his name was Mark Bernardin. He actually, like, wrote an article about it, being like, why isn't there a black Spider-Man, you know? And he literally got death threats saying, like, hey, don't you come to Comic-Con.
What the fuck?
Yeah. And then I wish I can remember the name of the person who actually wrote the comic, but you know, he saw that article and kind of thought, yeah, why not? Let's do it. And he made a Miles Morales comic. And I mean, it's just more than just being a colored Spider-Man or anything, or really just being a Spider-Man movie at all. One of the best things about this movie is just the message of it, and that anyone can be behind the mask. And did you know how they kind of stuck to that idea in the movie? It was I saw it on a video. I just have his name right here. Carrie Patton or Payton. He is this voice actor for Cyborg in the Teen Titans show, and he's also on Walking Dead. He's the leader of the Kingdom. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah, him. He actually went up to the writer of the comic and told him, like, yo, thank you so much for making this comic. Ever since I was a kid, I always told, whenever me and my friends will play superhero, I always choose Spider-Man. And they'll say, no, you can't be Spider-Man. He's white. They'll tell him that. And he says, no, you don't know what's under the mask. Anyone can be under the mask. And he literally told that to the writer. And when they made this movie, that's just what
Stan Lee himself would often say that. I've seen many different, interviews with Stan Lee where he says, why people love what people love the most and why ultimately people love the character of Spider-Man is that anyone can wear the mask. And as he says in this movie, the suit always fits eventually. But there's something I think, all of the history of this character, is great and all. But like to me as, as mainly just a film fan, and I obviously, because, we cover this industry and everything, I was aware of this character's existence in comics. I know that he was brought up many times in like the Donald Glover cameo in Homecoming, the other Spider-Man movie. So I was familiar with what this character was, but I also just think it was just the coolest thing ever to, base it on. And he's not just, black. He's also, Hispanic. It's, a biracial character, a biracial family of sorts. And I think there's something special about that. I mean, it almost as if, because of course the message of the movie is that anyone can wear the mask. And it is, I feel, very much empowering for certain communities of color to see that, be someone not Caucasian for the first time with this character anyway. Which is why, movies like Black Panther were big for those people who, and that's why I always say that the power of, seeing yourself on the big screen is something that can't honestly be quantified, in terms of just how the sheer magnitude of the power of that, it's just, you honestly just, you really can't measure it up. And what a year this must have been for certain people. 2018, because it was both the year Black Panther and then this came out. So truly, truly empowering, I feel. And then also just as a character, I think the filmmakers have done a great job so far at this point so we began the film with like, okay, let's do this one last time. Kind of like a joke of, okay, here's another Spider-Man movie. Here's your another origin story, which, to talk about that Peter Parker, who we don't get too much time with in this movie, but he was very much, I feel, they were kind of like an amalgamation of all the different pop culture items that we associate Spider-Man to be. But for me, as a huge fan of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, the Peter Parker, while not obviously the same Peter Parker from those movies, it felt like the closest continuation to that, if you will, in terms of like, especially certain scenes that we got from some of those movies that were definitely referenced on screen. And it almost, in some weird cosmic way, again, this isn't the Peter Parker of those movies, but it feels like the continuation of that in some way. And then this part right here that we're watching, where Miles is beginning to feel the effects of that's funny. Puberty out. That's so funny. By the way, we're gonna be laughing a lot. There's some funny stuff in this film, but what you're seeing already, the comic panel inspired elements that we're seeing, right? So we're seeing he's thinking out loud more often, and we're seeing his thoughts like be illustrated in like these little thought bubbles that we're seeing as if we're, basically reading a comic book. It's so good. I really like, the transition is clear. But having gone to what I said previously in the opening of the movie and then jumping straight into Miles, And one interesting aspect is we begin and end Miles's story in the movie with that damn like Post Malone song, and in a bedroom, the Sunflower song, which like, god damn, is that a catchy song? Like they really picked a damn catchy song.
I've been hearing it at my work lately. Like when the first time I heard it,
Really?
I just took off my earphones and went, "Hold up, are they seriously playing this right now?" No freaking way! And every time I plays it, I just take off my earphones. It's so good.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
This was... Yeah.
Yeah. So one of my favorite scenes in the beginning was when we missed it, but the part where he spray paints the wall. And adds that no expectations, and then it's a silhouette of his body in the middle of it. I love that scene just because I took like an art history class, and I also love to draw and love art myself. So seeing that, I was kind of like, holy shit, they really just immediately showed like his character arc. What's it going to be really? And
honestly, the art is not something I paid too much attention to, but now that you pointed out, yeah, I think clearly that was intentional, but yeah, that must speak a lot to it. I mean, it's so helped, but I mean, it's inherent in the character of Miles in this movie, but the whole movie looks like an art painting almost.
Oh yeah.
I mean, because it is basically inspired to look or made to look like a comic book, and a comic book is printed art.
Mm-hmm.
Which is the inspiration to it, I think. Yes, go ahead, David.
No, I was laughing. It's who's more Alice?
Not that dumb. Yeah, that was a bit too stupid. No, this is honestly, it's incredible to me how many versions of this fucking origin story that we've seen. And like Homecoming, by design, went out of its way to not really cover the same things that we saw in the Raimi films and then also in the Andrew Garfield movies, and I think it worked to its benefit there. But here they go for the tropes, the same tried and true origin story elements, because I think of the inherent nature of the story. But man, I mean, I'm loving this. I really am. Like, at no point do I feel like, tired or exhausted. Like I really have seen this in so many other Spider-Man movies, because there have been so many other Spider-Man movies, and I think it gets away with it because you like Miles, and also, how do you not laugh at that?
Yeah.
I mean, oh my god.
Oh my god. Yeah, no, I mean, again, like I said in the beginning, like, this movie just throws you in immediately with everything. The jokes, the story, and then the character arcs.
It sucks you in.
It sucks you in, yeah. And even right here, like, we're just seeing the origin story, basically.
Right.
Of the comics, and he's kind of, and we're all piecing it together, like, oh, shoot.
Right. I love how they just throw classic comic books like that on as a little bit of a transition.
Yes. Oh, that's one other thing. Also the way it's just sort of subtly and not so subtly throws in what's the word?
Easter eggs?
No, not Easter eggs. Sets up everything. Like when we first see Gwen in the class and they're watching that presentation. And it's you see the professor talking about the multiverse, basically, and how it is going to fit in later on, and also right here in the big, and this also when you first see Spider-Man, Peter Parker, basically, and they throw in the comic, and then they throw this comic at you, and it's just like it just keeps going and going to really setting up into something way bigger in the end, which we'll get to.
Yeah, there are a lot of things in the movie. I love films that really show you what's going to happen before they happen. When we get to the part where Spider-Man, Peter Parker, this version of Peter Parker, his head gets by Goblin, is injected into the collider while it's trying to start up, and then we see flashes of the other Spider people that we will be introduced to. One of the things that I think perfectly describes it, because Phil Lord was talking about this in his commentary track, which I recommend you go listen to if you really love this movie, because you get much more insight into, like, you know, how many versions of certain scenes and, you know, making this movie. But I mean, how he described this style of animation is actually pretty apt, and that is, this is basically it's made to look like 3D without having to wear glasses, is how they describe this. And then, of course, here we have the enormous Green Goblin, which, from what I understand, this is closest to the iteration from the Miles Morales comic series. This is how the Green Goblin looks like. Certainly not the Goblin that we're most familiar with, at least from the movies are concerned. It's not the Goblin of, like, the Itsy Bitsy Spider from the classic Green Goblin. I still love that classic Green Goblin when people like cringe at it, but I'm like, that's some 2000s cheese, and I love it right there.
My favorite is the hot Osborne. The hot. Yeah.
Oh my god. Out, am I? Oh my god. Go back and listen to the commentaries I did with Peter Martinez and Kyle Lira. We had so many of those moments, like, damn Green Goblin.
Oh yeah.
Oh gosh.
It was in this scene that I actually got a little bit worried with the animation, just because they really added in that blur effect with some of the characters, and I was kind of like, ooh, I hope this doesn't make me dizzy. And I don't get dizzy much, like, on movies or rides, so it was really worrying me. But
let's talk about that, if we can, because I think that's for some people that could be a tad too much. I do remember, you know, walking out of the film with this initial reaction of having loved it, having thought it was an amazing film and a work of art, but as some of the best works of art that we've ever seen, there may have been some sections of the movie that maybe pushed it a bit too much in terms of how much they were literally throwing at your eyes.
Yeah.
Not just in terms of the blurry effect with I mean, from what different effects can we mention? I mean, the whole final battle sequence.
Yes, it was a lot of colors.
It was like, honestly, like, the first time I saw it, I couldn't. I think it was too much for me to handle, quite frankly.
Even for me too. I mean, it was really just a bunch of big colors popping out there everywhere.
Yeah, like, and yeah.
But you sort of forget about it later on as the movie goes on, because I think it might have been intentional too in the animation, because, you know, I think he's so overwhelmed by his powers, hearing everything, his whole brain is enhanced basically, and so as he hones his powers, I think it kind of goes less and less of the blur effect and some of the colors. I mean, that third act, again, it goes really big with the colors, but that's intentional because it's a big action scene, of course. Oh my gosh, this scene when we first really see the first interaction between Peter Parker and Miles.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved it. I instantly fell in love with this Peter Parker. Just kind of like already trying to comfort him, and then just ready to set him off like, hey, let's work together. Or ready to train him, take him under his wing. It was so amazing.
We'll get to Kingpin and Prowler in a bit. I mean, again, we're trying to catch up with the movie, but there's so much to say about what's happening. I mean, that's why, you know, to mention that scene you were talking about, that's why, to me, you know, that Peter Parker that we're seeing right there is felt closest to Tobey Maguire. And like that whole scene of like, I thought I was the only one. Oh, don't worry, I'll show you the ropes and everything. Like, it has you almost kind of semi-convinced, okay, this is the movie that I'm going to see. We're going to see Spider-Man train Miles Morales. That's your movie. But no, they kill him. They fucking kill Spider-Man. And they have a long sequence where, you know, we're seeing the death of Peter Parker in the memorial, and then MJ, and we'll get to it, right? But it was earlier on in the movie, and strangely, it caught me kind of misty-eyed, if not just outright emotional, watching the death of Peter Parker, which is not something that I personally experienced, because I have never read a version. Well, I mean, I only see the movies, right? So I had never seen that in a movie where Peter Parker, any version of Peter Parker, dies. We'll have more times to talk about, oh yeah, so these black dots, I got this straight from the commentary. So apparently when you see black dots, those are straight from the classic comic books from Steve Ditko, because Steve Ditko was the artist, right? He did all the art for the Spider-Man comics. And the black dots are the people behind the movie referred to them as Ditko dots, because those would appear any single time something cosmic or weird was happening in the classic comic books with Spider-Man. So just one classic element from the source material you see it all throughout the movie, these black dots.
Oh, I mean, I don't know if it was Ditko, but I remember seeing some classic like Avengers comics, when we're dealing with like, something with the Infinity Saga, or maybe just anything with the cosmos. I do remember seeing those dots on whenever some powerful cosmic energy is around, right. Basically. Or right here, just setting up the dangers of this whole situation. Oh man. And it really, it's a really great moment just for Miles, because he's getting thrown again. We just keep getting thrown into situations and story beats. Sorry, I'm distracted.
No, I mean, you get sucked into the film, and we mentioned earlier, like at some points in the movie, maybe there's too much going on screen, but they get away with it largely because from the very beginning of the film, as we mentioned, this movie just hits the ground running. It really does, and it moves, and it's just so. I think what's most impressive is how confident the movie itself feels in its style. Like, there's no half-assing, there's like no sugarcoating or pussyfooting going around here. It's what it is. Like, for example, okay, so we have this Peter Parker was voiced by Chris Pine, and he has blonde hair, so,
which is a huge surprise. It's a huge surprise for me when I first heard it. I'm like,
yeah, right.
Wait, what?
I didn't pick that up.
Same.
Oh my gosh. It's just like, I want to talk about Kingpin, but then also what's about to happen right here is pretty massive and pretty dark too, like for this movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could talk about Kingpin. Yeah. I really liked the way they portrayed him. It wasn't just kind of like this big gangster guy like he was in the Daredevil or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that his whole goal was just to get his family back. Very different from any other villain. And
I mean, isn't that the bitch in a way? Like, I mean, how many comic book films have we had by the time this was released, and yet very easily and simply they were able to give one of the most emotional motivations a villain's had. Mm-hmm. Like, you do feel for him, and I think I was also a little bit helped by, being a big fan of the Daredevil series, Wilson Fisk, and then also the Vanessa character there. So it's like, I'm very much helped by other iterations of these characters, and so I kind of know now to an extent what like comic book fans feel like with like certain DC movies that don't do a necessarily good job of like characterization, but still the characters like Batman and Superman. I kind of now know what that feels like more because with Wilson Fisk. But again, the movie does its own version of Kingpin here. By the way, the theme for the Prowler, wow.
Yeah. I mean, wow. It really does sound like Prowler, like the theme of the music, like it's just kind of like you're scared. It intensifies at the moment, and it's so good.
So yeah, I mean, the motivation was definitely well for that character. And even the way that he, by the way, we should talk about the relationship here between Miles and his dad. Really, again, and I mentioned this on the Decade show that we did recently, but to me, this movie in so many ways shows you what the best of animation can be when you have a fully formed, developed, and emotional relationship between Miles and his father, who, again, we begin with them like not seeing eye to eye on anything, having a very like friction type relationship, and yet they come closer and closer. And there are some real emotional scenes in this movie between two animated characters that I think far exceed some of the most emotional scenes we've seen from live action characters.
Yeah.
Like, wow, that just blows my mind. And I think it gets me mad when people like dismiss this medium. Like, there was an interesting thing. I was just listening to a video real quick about, you know, how certain audiences from around the world see animation. Whereas like the Japanese, I mean, with anime and everything, right? They really like worship at the altar of animation, shall we say? But like, even though while American audiences, you know, do spend money to go see animated movies, generally people do view the medium of animation as a kid's outlet and nothing more than that, even in this day and age.
No, yeah. It's animation. It really is just art. You know, this whole movie, it pops up so many different mediums of 2D and 3D, and it just combines animations and comic books into something really beautiful. And to me, the best way to describe this type of art of animation is abstract, almost, because, you know, it uses the form to sort of put in everything into one screen, not just like emotions, but also surroundings and reactions from other characters. And that's basically kind of what abstract art is. It's sort of most famously Picasso's. His form of abstract is to kind of like show if he's drawing a person, he shows everything from all sides, from like the eyes to the back of the head and like the back, but also just like if it's a piano, you also see behind it. That's basically how abstract art is, and I think that's the best way to describe this type of animation.
You know, forgive me for getting a little bit emotional here, but I'm just like continuously just swept by the moment of these scenes right here. You know, especially when the film was released, it was not long after Stan Lee had passed away. And, you know, just the lines he had right there, you know, I knew him, you know, I'm going to miss him. I mean, that was, I mean, God, I remember watching that and just feeling overwhelmed with emotion, just welling up with tears. Like, man, like what an amazing man Stan Lee was. And it honestly makes me want to cry right now thinking that he's not with us anymore. Because that man was like everything that you'd want to be, right? Like 95 years living as great as he did, and as happy as we thought this was so, oh my God, this killed the fucking stairs, this killed, oh my God. But yeah, Stan Lee, we miss you. I really miss Stan Lee. I wish he was still around.
It was crazy timing, that cameo, seeing that cameo,
and it's so emotional.
Everything he said, like it hit everyone who was a huge fan of him or just knew him. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The goober,
I know, right? Honestly, I know the main things that we all talked about, you know, the animation, the characterization, the heart, the emotion, those get discussed enough, but maybe what's not discussed enough and what may be underappreciated is the fucking humor. This movie is like, there were moments last night, because I rewatched the movies before I sat down and record them with you. There were moments, this is like late at night, and I'm just like, some real moments where I just like bust out laughing, and I mean like laughing hard and laughing loud. like particularly with Spider-Ham later on in the movie. I mean,
when he first introduced, it's great.
Oh God.
Yeah.
And one other we're gonna get to here is the next Spider-Man, Peter B. Parker from a different alternate reality, and this came out before I became like a diehard fan of the television series New Girl. Are you familiar with the show?
Yes, I've seen it all.
Oh my God. And had I seen New Girl before this movie, and if I were to have like been involved with the making of this movie and thinking who to cast for this Peter B. Parker character, I could think of no better than Jake Johnson, because Jake Johnson, who plays Nick on the show New Girl, perfectly encapsulates the kind of curmudgeon, middle-aged, I don't give a fuck, I'm done with life attitude, washed up has-been, but underdog that you still root for persona than Jake Johnson. Like, he is perfect for this character. And look at how quick this goes. Like, it's throwing so much at you. I mean, information, damn.
This is why he's so perfect, though. Like, he's moving it fast, but it sounds funny. And, like, even though everything we see, like, his life is going down, but he somehow makes it funny. Like, moving super fast and making us go, oh, shoot, oh, God. And you're laughing at the same time. Right here. No. It's like right before he goes to the portal.
It's all Johnson though. Johnson's so great at doing this.
Yeah,
like, transitioning. Yeah, go ahead.
It's like the way he delivered like the last line before he goes to the portal. It was hilarious because you can hear like the bullshit coming out of his mouth. Like, right. Like doing push-ups, getting ab crunches.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, also go watch New Girl. I love New Girl. I get a little bit, emotional and also / embarrassed, but like, New Girl is like one of those shows like Parks and Recreation where like, it's kind of like that dramedy comedy type show that I get so invested in, and then when I finish the shows, I'm like notorious for having like this post-mortem depression that sets in, and I'm like, because like to me, and that's why I kind of distance myself from like TV shows nowadays, mainly because when I get really attached to characters, oh my God, do I have a hard time letting go. Like it's so hard, and then they're not, like, when you watch them every single day, especially if you're binge watching those shows, and then they're gone, and then you're like, wow, I feel so left alone. So yeah, go watch New Girl. But yeah, this Peter B. Parker, it's just, again, it's also just the novelty of seeing a Peter Parker that's middle-aged and fat and kind of a loser. But I mean, a good-hearted loser. But like, you've never seen a Peter Parker that's just been such a, what most people would consider an abject failure at life, right? I mean, also this is just kind of it's ridiculous, but it works so well. Just getting away from the cops and everything, and just, but again, it works with animation.
Yeah.
Oh, one of the things that one of the directors mentioned in the commentary is that anytime you see a train go by, there's some kind of a Stan Lee like cameo in there, like a portrait or a painting of Stan Lee on the train. So, which can be hard to see considering how fast paced this movie is. Like, look how amazing this looks, and then how quickly we're just like blowing past it. And I think one of the directors might have been a New Yorker or whatever, but they were saying that Oh God, he fucked up his face. They were saying how this felt exactly like how New York would feel like this time of year and during all this traffic.
Mm-hmm. I actually like the subtle differences of this universe from like ours. So I think it's not NYPD. I think it's PDNY or something.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I saw that, and I don't know what else. That's really just the only one that really stood out to me. But
I'm sure there are. I think there's if you look in the background, there I think the album cover for one of the Weeknd's albums is there somewhere. Apparently, Stan Lee is walking right here with his phone in this crosswalk, so maybe we'll see him.
Yeah, but, I did see him.
I think like the Weeknd is featured in one of the posters in the back, but he's not called the Weeknd. I don't know. That could be one of it. Could or could not be. But yeah. And there's just part of me that can't help but like identify with Peter B. Parker's personality, like the way like he treats. I'm not sure this is a good thing or a bad thing, but the way that he treats Miles right here is how I treat some people. I treat some kids necessarily. I mean, not little kids. I mean, kids like our Miles' age. I mean, it's how I talk to some people. Let's say if I have a class that I'm subbing for, the dynamic could be very much borrowed from this, which is why kind of like, to me, the character that I kind of identified most with in New Girl was definitely Nick. I love Nick, and there were parts of him like, you know, and how he sees the world that, scarily enough, like really were like close to mine. And so with Peter B. Parker here, yeah, but then it's like the reason why I so connect with him is like, yeah, like he has like this really curmudgeon like exterior, but like the more their relationship develops, the more you realize he really is just a big softie. He does have a heart there, and he really, even though he doesn't like to show it, like, you know, he's a big teddy bear almost.
Yeah, I mean, I think B. Parker is a lot older than this Peter Parker.
I think at least 20 years older.
20, yeah, I think I heard that too. And so he just got too many hits for him, and kind of, he's just tired, basically, you know?
Yeah.
So it's very understandable for his character to be like this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And again, Jake Johnson. I mean, he just delivers it so fucking well. Like, I think one of the big things that he talks about in terms of like, in his intro montage about why his marriage with MJ fails because she wanted kids and he didn't. And then here we have him growing with his relationship with Miles. And then it was so hilarious to me. I was laughing so hard but it ended up working so well in the moment, and then so well for his character arc. But like, there's a point like late in the third act where like, you know, Miles has come back, he's rose to the occasion, and then out loud he says, "Do I want kids?" I mean, because it's like, you know, he is kind of a father figure of sorts. There are also moments that we'll see later on where he's you see like the veneer kind of like wear off. There's a scene in the bus where Miles is talking with Gwen, and like, you know, you tell he really likes her. She might like him too. They think he's asleep, and then it cuts to him, and he's like listening to the entire conversation, and you can tell. By the way, hilarious right there. Whoever that person was, he must have been on acid or something. Is what I would think anyway. But to the scene that I was talking about, you could tell that like Peter B. Parker was thinking of like his younger days with MJ, and like, yeah, so. It's that thing of like not wanting kids until you might want them kind of thing. So, yeah. I'm sorry if I went on a long diatribe. That was just talking about the character.
We're going to be silent for a few moments just because we're so distracted by this movie.
Yeah. And I love some movies have this effect where it's like, it reminds you there's a camera in front of them. Right, I love that little touch where, you know, Peter Parker bit you know, that burger, and then part of the sauce just splattered on the camera.
Oh, yeah.
By the way, that food looks great.
Oh my god, yeah, right? It looked delicious when
It's
I first watching
rare
it.
to find an animated movie not named Ratatouille that makes food look so good. Mm-hmm. And that burger looked delicious.
Yeah.
Like so good, I might want it right now.
Yeah. Oh, I love this joke right here. It's like, oh, let's swing over there. And he's like, what are you saying? We're just gonna get tired on the way over there.
I love that touch of him just laughing in his face. Like, yeah, that's not happening.
Yeah.
Like, no joke, that's how I treat some people. I mean, it's like, that's not happening. So I guess, has there been a Spider-Man that wore a cape?
Well, we do see one, remember, later on this movie? Mm-hmm. Where it's like a purple suit and has a cape.
And they're all based on real iterations of Spider-Man from what I can tell.
Yeah, I think so. Oh my gosh, this one has like one of the funniest jokes right here.
We're literally seeing a comic book panel right here. Yeah, this joke. Re-examine that person.
Oh my god, yeah. Yeah.
Oh god. This movie is so great, man. It really is. And oh god, that fucking bagel. That bagel gets a lot of screen time.
Yes.
In this entire section.
I don't know if you ever saw it, but like when he throws, at one point he actually gets the bagel and throws it at someone.
Yeah.
The person that it lands on, you actually see the word bagel.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, oh my god, that's so great.
God, it's so good.
I was laughing at, because when Peter and Miles run out of the lab, and all those people realize who they are and they start chasing him. He has the hard drive, but then one of the girls chasing him was like, "Bring back that bagel!"
It's like, he stole my bagel.
Also, the character design. We should talk about the character design of Kingpin here, because it was so interesting hearing Phil Lord talk about this in the commentary, and it kind of clicks when he says that his design in this movie, like, why he's basically just like this big head. I mean, this head on this big body. It's like he's a black hole. That's what his character is now, because there's nothing left to him after Vanessa and his son were gone, and that's all he spends this movie going after. And even though, like, but that's kind of why he looks that big and huge, and why it's just like a big black suit. Is like he's just nothing but a black hole.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. That's really cool. I love it.
There already is a black hole. It's right there in front of you.
Oh, nice.
So Liv, or as her personal friends call her Liv, but Doc Ock. There's actually, again, just listening to them talk about this movie, there are so many clues about her. Like, her glasses are octangular shaped.
Oh my god.
They're not square, they're not circular. It's a literal octagon.
Octagon lights. What the heck? Oh right? My god. See, this is what I mean. Like, they're so subtle, but also not so subtle.
Right.
It's so great. I love it.
I had noticed these things. I mean, they're so subtle, or maybe so obvious that your brain just doesn't register it the first few times. But like, looking at it now, it's like, how could I have missed this?
Yes. Yeah, so like right here, I'll mention it when we get to the scene, but it's really important where he says you need to relax. That's why like he's getting stuck, and like I'll just remember that. I'll bring it up later on.
Oh god. Apparently they had a hard time deciding. They had a hard time animating him being invisible, from what I heard.
Really?
They couldn't decide how to, like, because there are certain kind of invisibilities. I know it doesn't sound like it'd be hard, right? But apparently it was like, it took a long time. Mm-hmm. You were saying?
No, I was just kind of laughing.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say something.
Mm-mm. So right here, We already spoiled it, but this is Dr. Octavius from this universe. And how surprised were you when that reveal happened?
I kind of was like, I was two ways about it. I was like, kind of screaming in my head, "Oh my god, this fucking movie!"
Yes.
And then I was like, "Oh, okay, of course, of course, right?" Like I was I was of two minds in the sense that I was so excited, but then part of me something must have registered to where like it wasn't that big of a shock, but still it was. And I guess like, I mean, again, I have a very limited like knowledge of comic book lore, so I'm not aware of like a female version of Doc Ock. But I mean, who gives a shit, right? Like she's cool.
Yeah, no, I don't think it matters of the knowledge, but well, I mean, I guess it does if you've seen like the Sam Raimi ones, or maybe you've heard of it, and it's just kind of like a big surprise that it's like, oh, this is Dr. Octavius. Nice, it's a great change. I think what was most surprising though is what she says right here.
I can't wait to.
Yeah,
I love how Miles is like, "What the fuck?"
Yes.
And then this. I mean,
I actually love her versions of the tentacles. It's like it looks plastic and it just constantly extends. Who knows how
but they
far?
also look alive.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like it's kind of pulsating, like the blood flowing or something. I don't know.
Right. Also, Miles, you do realize you only need the damn hard drive.
Yes.
You don't need the monitor. You can... Okay.
We're going to keep referencing jokes here, but like when he says, it's like, good news, we don't need the monitor.
And here's Gwen working at the lab. Wasn't in the Andrew Garfield Emma Stone version, wasn't she also working at a lab?
Yeah.
Where they were having like the lizard guy or whatever it was?
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if that's how she is in the comics, but
in that movie anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are some similar like tropes that they, recycle here, but they still work so well. But again, just more clues like, oh, this character is obviously somebody. And of course, here we have the bagel.
Selecting a bagel? I love it though right here. It's like just regular scientists and all of a sudden
when they fucking like go all Rambo and shit, they have their fucking briefcases turn into fucking like AK-37.
Bagel.
Oh gosh.
We're just gonna keep pointing out the jokes here. So
I mean, but they're so funny and they're so good. So we have to. We just have to.
All right, here I love the fun fact of they animated Peter B. Parker going 60 frames per second, and Miles going 30 frames per second, just to show the differences between their technique.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Just to show the differences
love touches
between
like that. I really do.
Yes, it's so great.
It was apparently one of the animators was like confused with the directors because they didn't ask to animate the trees rustling, like wind rustling, because they didn't want that for some reason, because it just would have taken away from the style of it. So they just, I guess it would have in some way, although I'm not sure how big of a difference that would be. But they didn't. Yeah. It was a particular choice to not have any wind to make the leaves on the trees rustle.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, I think you see them move still when they're swinging around.
Of course. I mean, so, again, they're trees.
Yeah.
It was just an interesting point that I heard from the commentary that was a little bit contentious. So we're like, what? You don't want them to move? I'm like, okay. I love this moment. Oh, yes.
So great.
You're seeing them bond. You see the beginning of their relationship. You see them really like, they're actually more simpatico than, especially what Peter Parker thought initially. You're the student, but just not as good.
Not as good.
God damn.
We
should also mention the introduction.
Oh,
the introduction.
God.
Talk about Spider-Gwen.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so great. It starts with like a little rock band melody, and she just swoops right in, kicking ass.
It's literally like a rock star entrance. Yeah. That's what it is.
Right. Just listen to the music.
And it's so, I think the uniqueness of this movie is so helped. Not just, the concept of an alternate reality is not anything new.
Mm-hmm.
But what they do with it in the meat of animation is that all of the different spider people are animated differently.
Yeah.
And they move differently and they look differently. They literally do look like they're from different universes.
Mm-hmm. I feel like Gwen is really different from Miles in that they're heading more towards like that Pixar style animation with her, I feel. Because I think with Miles, like you said, like it does kind of look like a stop motion. Like he looks kind of like a clay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of like her, just a very subtle difference between her and Miles.
Right, but then also a different touch in the universe that she lives in. Look at how glowy it looks.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so different.
It's Jessica Jones purple.
Basically, yeah.
That's cool. Actually, even the background actually looks like her opening, if you remember Jessica Jones's opening.
Yeah. It's very much Jessica Jones, yeah. Which, go watch that show. I only ever saw season 1, but it was a great season. I love Jessica Jones.
At least watch the first season.
Did you watch? I think we talked about that. Yeah. It was years ago, but yeah.
I've seen all of them.
Yeah.
And then I think one difference they made with her, what was she? A gymnast or a dancer in this movie?
In terms of like her background?
Yeah. I think she was a dancer.
Well, all I know is that her background, because I had assumed wrongly when she said later in the movie that like her Uncle Ben was losing Peter Parker, because in her universe, she's the one that gets powers and Peter Parker doesn't. And the way that it goes, as they explain in the commentary, is that Peter was jealous of Gwen, and then Peter kind of became a villain in that universe.
Dang. Yeah. No, but I remember in the she doesn't have this thing in the comics, but in this movie, I think they made her like a dancer or a gymnast, and it's why she kind of has like these ballerina type shoes on her suit. But
Makes
also
sense.
The way that she moves, she moves kind of like a dancer basically. And at one point where all the spider people are talking to Miles to see if he's capable of doing what needs to be done, I think with her, she says, "Can you move with the grace of a dancer?" Basically, something like that. We'll go to it. So I think it was just like a nice little touch that they added to her character.
Certainly, animation is not easy. It isn't, but all these things you just described could not have been any easier to do. And one slight touch, what I did pick up from the commentary track, is all of the facial expressions in this movie, they were drawn on there were two, that's literal 2D that you're seeing, but you have the 3D on top of it. So it's like multi-dimensional.
Oh my god.
the expressions of the characters in this movie. Also, I love how Doc Ock could hold her own against Kingpin there.
Yeah.
She's not like the silly, happy-go-lucky person. Like, she's a serious like threat. And so.
Oh yeah, you get that right from the beginning.
Yeah, this is the scene that I was alluding to earlier.
Yeah.
Because he's listening the whole time. And yeah, I mean there are very subtle differences between how they move and interact. I mean, just the different with Gwen and with Miles. Oh, and how did we not mention Haley Steinfeld? Haley Steinfeld, everybody.
Yeah. I've seen on YouTube at least Spider-Gwen in the, I guess it was like a Disney DX show or some type of short where Dove Cameron voiced Spider-Gwen, and she did pretty good. And honestly, there's no difference between the two. Like, I don't know what it is. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but like both Haley Steinfeld and Dove Cameron did a great job of just kind of portraying a teenage, I guess, teenage rock star.
Right.
Spider-Gwen.
And I mean, think about like Dove Cameron. She would make an amazing live action Spider-Gwen.
Oh,
sure.
Sure.
She has the look of it, and definitely from what we saw from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the physicality to go along with it. Also, the legendary Lily Tomlin as Aunt May. They get some big names for these characters. Lily Tomlin, if you're not aware, she's these days you can catch her on the show Grace and Frankie on Netflix, and other stuff, of course. I love the dig at the sweatpants. No, but Haley Steinfeld, to me, she's one of the most like interesting people working today because of the different projects that she picks. You know, I just saw last year The Edge of 17. Oh my God. What an amazing movie. What an amazing film. And she's great in everything that she does. I mean, she was, I think, a big part of why I liked Bumblebee so much. Like, she just picks different kinds of movies, different kinds of roles. She's just always good in anything. And of course, I do want to mention it now before I forget. And I should have mentioned, I mean, a big part of why we love Miles is because, you know, Shameik Moore, who does, you know, the voice of Miles, is just so great. There's these subtle, like, he just makes Miles feel like a real person. By the way, I guess this was like inspired by the comics, but like to me, I literally just thought, oh, Batcave, Spider-Man Batcave. Like that's kind of what I was thinking. I mean, isn't that more or less what it is? It's a Batcave for Spider-Man. It's a Spider Cave.
Yeah. No, I think it just shows
real subtle right here, because like a lot of the music in the movie is off a great soundtrack. But there's also Pemberton, who did the score for this movie, you know, really seamless. Oh my God, there's so many things. That look right there that she just gave Miles and Peter, just like that knowing look of, you know, the blossoming dynamic of their relationship was so good. But the score was orchestrated and written in a way to really like go along with the songs that we see in the movie, to where it's like you forget sometimes where you're if you're hearing the score, if you're hearing the songs, because this film has a great soundtrack as well as a great score.
No, I remember when I said in Infinity War we were talking about the score in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I said that in the Marvel MCU, the score only tries to work in favor of the action scenes, just to kind of get you hyped up of a big moment or just any other action scene. And with any other movie, or at least with Infinity War, you know, the music tried to tell a story in it. Right. This one does it so perfectly. If so, I'm sure if everyone's listening to this, but you probably missed it. But in the beginning, you kind of, or actually, you heard it here. You kind of get like a. I wish I could do the beat like. Well,
even this right here, this theme, every single time the Spider People realize they've encountered more people like them.
Mm-hmm. No, but this one though, like in the beginning, when you see Peter Parker of this universe, you know, you get his theme going on, and then when you first meet Miles, you don't hear a theme, you just hear a song, and it was Sunflower. When his big arching moment where he finally becomes Spider-Man, they combine both Peter Parker's and a song into that scene to sort of show that both the superhero world and his world are finally together. Like I'm sure you'll subtly notice it when that thing comes up. But it's again, this movie's so perfect.
It really is. Shout out John Mulaney's great as Spider-Ham, and of course Nick Cage, legendary Nick Cage as Noir Spider-Man. Oh my fucking God, I was going insane. Yeah. Like when this happened, and to think that there was a serious discussion. They mentioned this in the commentary track, but there was a serious discussion had by the directors of the movie. And like, are you sure you want to include Noir Spider-Man, Penny Parker, and Peter Parker? Because, and I think understandably, there's a risk of this movie getting just too much out of hand and like out of control. And this could have been one of those moments where the movie just like it's crushed by the weight of its own premise, basically. But it's incredible. I mean, I think what helped. Here I am, stop an amazing killer joke. Nick Cage, every single line they give Nick Cage, I feel that. Oh my God. But what was I saying? There was definitely a danger for this to have all fallen apart. And I think what the film established so far in how it introduced Peter Parker, Peter B. Parker, and Spider-Gwen, it laid the groundwork for seamlessly introducing three pretty drastic alterations on Peter Parker. I mean, how different are these fucking characters from anything we've like? You think about, from the perspective of Spider-Man fans who only know the movies. Just think about how mind-blowing these different iterations are. Like, what the fuck?
Mm-hmm. Oh, see, she said it right there. Grace of a trained dancer. That's what she says, and that's one slight difference that they added to her.
The fuck?
I was gonna say something.
I was too, but then the movie happened.
Yeah. How crazy is it that this movie was able to establish like a bunch of villains, but also a bunch of superheroes together when the live action ones couldn't try setting up Sinister Six, and it just completely failed. Like, this is why animation works, though.
Honestly, I'm amazed at how many. So we've got the Green Goblin, we've had Doc Ock, we have Kingpin, Tombstone, Scorpion, and the Prowler, right? Those are our main villains we use in the movie. Holy shit. Like, it's... Like, talk about the history of Sony and their Spider-Man movies. I mean, part of the reasons why Amazing Spider-Man 2 crashed and failed miserably was because it established one too many villains. It couldn't even establish the main villain, right? But then it had so many throwaway villains there, too. They were even making a whole... Remember, years ago, there were rumors of Sinister Six. That was a big movie that was, that they were seriously going to go and make, but they couldn't... They couldn't do that because, Amazing Spider-Man 2 was so disappointing that they were literally... That's what ended up being the turning point for Sony to go to the Marvel Cinematic Universe and make a deal. Because they were so shocked by the response to Amazing Spider-Man 2 that they were like, okay, we need to do something different here.
And I love that. I think it's funny. It's probably kind of sad that it's a pattern with Sony, because I feel like when they first started making Spider-Man with the Sam Raimi, they kind of just let him do whatever he wants.
Right.
I don't know much about what went into the production of this, but I feel like they just kind of let him do whatever he wants, set up this character, and like
with this movie we're talking about here.
No, with
Raimi.
The Sam Raimi ones.
Okay.
And, it was a huge success, and I think they kind of let him do whatever he wants again, and then that's when they meddled in Spider-Man 3. And with the Amazing Spider-Man, they meddled with the movie because they thought, oh, MCU is there, let's kick it back up, let's make some money with this. And then they saw the failure of it, and I think they really did this with Spider-Verse. Like I said, the what is it? Phil Lord and Chris Miller.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want to do this. They wanted they tried telling them something impossible that they wouldn't agree to, but they went, yeah, do whatever you want. That's basically what they did, and it was a huge success again. Like,
I want to take this time to and thank you for bringing them up, just to clarify for people, because it's important to really recognize the people who were the directors and the writers. Phil Lord was definitely one of the writers and one of the directors. We were also accompanied by different other people. Rodney Rothman was a writer and then also a director, and you have three other co-directors. Actually, two other co-directors with Peter Ramsey and with Bob Persichetti. So, and of course, Chris Miller was producing the movie. So it's like you have a lot of people who've come together to make, Into the Spider-Verse, which it's crazy, right? Because normally a film that had that many writers and directors, well, writers, but a film that has like 4 directors is not normally associated with being a good thing, because usually the thing that you hear most often is, oh, there's too many cooks in the kitchen. And like the film feels like it was written by like different kinds of people, and then it feels like so like mishmash. But the opposite in this case, it's true, where this is just a master cohesive piece.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we should talk about the theme of the Prowler, and then also the look of the Prowler. Oh my god.
It is.
And of course the reveal of it being Uncle Aaron. We just saw that. Did you expect that? Like
no, I think I heard about it before the movie came out.
Look how this looks. Alex,
man.
look how this is.
Yeah, I actually no. I remember now. I knew he was a villain. I just didn't think they were gonna do it in this movie. So it was.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was a huge surprise for me that he was the Prowler, and we missed it. But like that, when the reveal happened, and you get his like theme music going, but they also added like almost like a little tragic of a theme when there was for Miles knowing that his uncle's a villain. It's so good.
That girl was like chewing bubblegum and eating popcorn at the same time. Also, I know I didn't realize until they pointed it out, but what we just saw right there, Penny Parker, when she handed Peter the Goober, I did not realize she had like rollerblades on her shoes.
No way.
No, literally, because if you go back and rewind the scene, she's not walking because she was in the kitchen. She didn't walk to them; like she rolled to them. Isn't that amazing? I did not realize that until they pointed it out in the commentary track.
Yeah, I want to play some jokes that they made. What is it? Nick Cage's character? He's playing with the Rubik's Cube, and because he lives in the black and white world, he has no idea what the colors are. So he's like, "Is this blue? No. Is this blue? No." Gosh darn it. And then he also added that one joke when he explained who the Prowler was. And he's like, "That's a pretty hardcore origin story."
I laughed so fucking hard.
Oh my god.
It was like, because it's a pretty great origin story.
Yeah. Also, we missed it, but
we
you know
don't
how
pick the ballroom, we just dance. Oh my god.
It's so great. But you know how Doc Ock said only my friends call me Liv. When she came into the house, Aunt May literally says, "Oh look, it's Liv." So it's like, are you friends with her?
I think the implication was there's a long history there, right? Because you know, Peter Parker.
And it could be that too. Oh my gosh, I love this scene.
Fucking Aunt May, let's do it. You know, one of the funniest things that came out of those like very publicized leaked rumors, or actually no, not rumors, but official like leaked emails out of the studio, Sony, was that there was serious consideration to make a standalone Aunt May movie.
Oh my god!
Remember that?
Like I was talking about when Sony like meddles in and it turns into a big failure. I could be wrong, but I feel like we're going to start seeing that again because of the success of this movie.
It is a pattern that unfortunately seems to repeat itself, right? I hope not. I really hope not, because I think a lot of the people who worked on this movie are returning for the subsequent sequels and series that we're doing. So I really am keeping my fingers crossed that they're going to be fine.
Yeah, same. But it's not just like the sequel to this one, but I know they're trying to make other animated spin-offs,
maybe even series.
Those are the ones that I'm really worried about.
Yeah, I mean, there is obviously a risk of it just being too big.
Yeah.
And this was a big moment here.
Oh my gosh! Oh, it's so intense just because once the uncle realizes that it's Miles, he's just so basically heartbroken for what he sees and what he's doing.
And he knows, because he gives a note. He knows that Kingpin is going to kill him for not killing his nephew.
But also, right here when Miles is talking, he can't breathe. Like he's literally holding him still, like super tight around his neck. Yeah, it's insane. Oh my god,
that's a regular Ezra Miller.
Oh my god.
I'm sorry, I had to getting choked out.
That was good though.
I had to, man. It was just right there. Holy shit.
Oh wow. That was good though.
Go look up the news, Ezra Miller.
Yeah.
That was we should point out before we lose him, they got the great Mahershala Ali to voice the character of Uncle Aaron. You are familiar with who he is, right?
Yes.
Mahershala. Mahershala. Yeah, he's gonna be Blade. Like, Mahershala is one of the best actors working today, just down and simple. And they were talking about in the studio booth when they were recording the lines how into it Mahershala got with this scene right here, how much of a method actor he really is. And it also, it didn't really occur to me until like recently reviewing it, but like this is a great like dichotomy. Maybe not dichotomy is the right word, but it's a nice like parallel. This sequence right here, Uncle Aaron dying in front of Miles is basically just a different version of Uncle Ben dying in front of Peter Parker. Only in different circumstances, but in essence, it does play the same part here. You're on your way, Miles. It's emotional, but this is the beginning of Spider-Man for him. And then there's also, God. They also told the animators to make him ugly cry. So this isn't supposed to be an attractive sequence here, so they can just make him like go all the way. Yeah. So this is his father. They're about to. I always thought that when he sees his brother Aaron's body laying there, I get the impression, because you can tell, and it's not said, but you can tell that there's been a very distant relationship between Aaron and Miles' father. And I think when he realizes that's his brother's body laying there, I kind of like, for me, it was like, oh, so the reason why he knows, like he knows his brother, he doesn't seem surprised that Aaron's in a fucking like bird costume or something. I don't know what it is, but like, oh, okay, so you've known, and the reason why you're so distant with him is because, you know, you're a cop and he's a fucking like criminal and everything. So yeah. You can tell, like, that's kind of what would drift them apart.
Yeah, I get it's just very subtle, but you know exactly what the relationship between them are.
Yeah,
and it's just really tragic.
And here we have, this was actually to me one of the more surprising emotional scenes, because you have all the different spider people. No one knows, like when she says, we're the only ones who know exactly how you feel right now. And, you know, they all talk about the people that they've lost, that have, you know, lit the flame for them to be who they are. When they cut right now to Spider-Ham, that to me was strangely emotional. The hardest part about this job, you can't always save everybody. Remember, that's something that Steve Rogers says, I think, in Civil War to Wanda, about, you know, the hardest thing is we can't always save everybody. And that's the hardest thing here. But an interesting aspect, oh God, the fucking, the roommate here. I love when he asks, do animals talk in this universe? I don't want to freak him out. Of course, they had to like knock him out and shit. But, you know, there was actually that scene right there. It was actually important because with Spider-Ham, because when they all turn to him, he's like, Miles, the hardest part about this job is you can't save everybody. That was a real emotional moment. Originally, that was not supposed to be that way. It was supposed to be another joke. And what they found is that at that point, people really didn't like that character going forward because he was just silly the entire time. Mm-hmm. So I think it really, the commentary track does insinuate that character really lived and died on that moment and selling that moment. He's a fucking pig, right? And it's like, that's actually the most emotional line in that sequence. And here's this.
Sorry for being quiet. This is quite
the scene.
It's one of the most important scenes, honestly.
It really is. And you know, it's like it's important to show them. It's like sometimes I think people might get the impression that they're being really mean to Miles, but really that scene that we just saw all of them hanging out by the window is like, no, they just They don't want him to get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not ready.
Yeah.
And it would be irresponsible for them to let him come along.
That's, again, another one of the most important. It's one of the most important lines.
It's a leap of faith, Miles, is all it is. And you know what? It's just so symbolic for just life in general. It's like no one knows exactly. No, you can't prepare for the kind of instances that set, a match to what the rest of your life will be like.
Mm-hmm.
It'll happen when it happens. And to me, and that Kyle Lira is a big fan of, on our network here, is a big fan of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
He's a big fan of that line. He always says that whenever he hears that line. It's a leap of faith, Miles, is all it is. Like, he's nearly in tears.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, this movie really, really did hit a nerve for a lot of people.
This scene right here, this is my absolute favorite scene. Because, I mean, the voice acting on him is so great. You know how much she wants to cry, and he just wants to connect with his son so badly. But for me, though, when he says, sorry, hold on. I'm trying to remember the exact line that he says, because I don't want to get it wrong.
I see the spark in you. It's amazing. It's why I push you.
That's the part that gets me the most, just because.
But it's yours. Whatever you choose to do with it, you'll be great.
No.
Yeah.
The reason why I love this scene so much is because of that line. Because I actually had a similar conversation with my dad. It was in my senior year, and I called him during school to tell him, like, because I was applying for colleges. And later on that night, we were kind of talking about it, and he says, if you want to go to college, go to college. If you want to work, go to work. But, you have talent, David, and I want to help you however way I can to, like, to get you what you need to be. And that scene almost gets me into tears.
See, that's getting me. That real story is getting me, and then also the scene is getting me too. I was watching this just last night, again, as I mentioned, and it got me real good. But I don't know if you need to hear this, but you really are, though. I mean, I have seen a lot of your work, and you are really good. And I think it might have been on one of our message boards, but I think your sister and I were also just like, imagine one day like you're like a fucking Pixar animator, just like, oh my fucking God. We would so take advantage of that, by the way. Just so you know, that's ever a thing, but we would. But, yeah, I mean, I just feel like that's, the sad thing is, everybody that ever lived needs to hear that. They need to hear those words, and far too many people just never will. So yeah, it really does, touch something. And if you recall, this was the scene that I singled out. I think, in the second part of the Decade show, when we brought up Into the Spider-Verse, it was that scene that we just saw with the father and the son that I singled out and praised for why I feel like that this movie was the best example for why animation and superhero movies at its best can do.
So this is what I meant, where they're great at, like, leading subtle things that lead up into great big things. So when he says you need to relax, that's why you're stuck. The reason why the glass breaks is because he is so afraid right now, and it gets stuck into his fingers, but he just needs to get that push in him and that's why it breaks. And we just missed it, but he's upside down, but we're seeing that he's falling down, but we see the city upside down, and everyone knows this, but that's him not falling, but he's rising.
Right.
It's so great. It's so good.
Yeah.
I think they even had that, like, as a storyboard, like they had that right there written. So I think that's what I heard. And
yeah, they Lord said in the commentary that two things, that scene was like, Miles was falling but rising at the same time, and that image was one of the few things that went directly from the storyboard and never changed into the final version of this movie.
Yeah, right here so we're basically going through everything that he just went through, like passing by like the cemetery, that bank right there. That was like the first place where he wanted to leap off of, I think. And then the scene before it, when he goes, woo, that building, we saw it there where he was falling down going, no, or like going, ah. And again, so like, it's just all these callbacks and perfect ending to his origin story. Just slap his comic. And like, we're done.
By the way, I laughed so hard. Why the fuck are they on a bus? Like, what the fuck? And like,
because they're gonna get tired on the way.
I mean, but it's like, you can just imagine all the people like, what the fuck is going on? No, man. I look. Yeah, great analysis about all the stuff that happened, and it is so easy to miss. It really is. I feel like if you're just like watching it like once and never see it again, but there's just so much detail that is underneath the surface. It's so good.
Yes, I love this joke. It's like, it can't be that easy, can it?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love it. It's like little. I really like this scene just because of right there, just that line that Gwen says.
Yeah.
Like I like how she's the responsible one in that situation.
She's the grown up, really.
Yeah.
Oh my god, fucking Jake Johnson really was perfect for this. Like, oh my god, how dramatic it gets. It's like the dichotomy, right? It gets more dramatic for him, but the more dramatic he gets, the funnier it is for us. All because of bread. I should have been there for you, and I let you down. They deserve. And it's subtle too, but I love how the background characters are blurred out, as you mentioned earlier before.
Yeah.
But it's oh my gosh.
Sleep. The heck?
I should have mentioned it before, but I do like the design of the collider itself. I mean, when it's turned off, it's just like it's just huge in scale, you know.
It is impressive. I think we talked about this when it first came out, or maybe I heard it. I don't know, but I kind of like how you can't really tell the scope of the collider, because like right now it looks huge, but then like as the whole multiverse is colliding into the collider, you see buildings popping out, and it's kind of like, how big is this place?
Right.
I kind of like how they mess with space in this situation.
Right. Which again, it's like, it's one of the freedoms the animation lends itself, you know?
Mm-hmm. Especially because, again, when we said in the beginning, there's so many colors popping out in this moment.
Oh my god.
I feel like
they're coming at you so quickly too.
Yeah, and so I don't think you really can't do that in live action. At least I don't think so.
It wouldn't look this... It wouldn't be this immersive. I think one of the things that people also forget to, acknowledge about animation is that you're just so immersed in it as well, in this world. And a lot of why animation can get away with so much that live action can't is just the use of color. One of the best sequences that's ever been made is the opening sequence of Beauty and the Beast with Belle. And she's the only one wearing blue. And the use of color and which colors to use certain characters and what colors not to use with others, makes it much. It pops a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the things in any film, right? Like, in the movie Hugo, literally the only colors that are used, it's like a warm blue and then a dark brown. That's it. In every single sequence.
Yeah. Do I want kids?
They're the Ditko dots.
Yeah.
And there's Vanessa and Richard.
Dang. Every direction. Miles' costume. I love the way they came up with it. Like how he created it, and they used his artistic side to recreate the costume basically and make it his own. It's so great.
Guys, are you seeing? Yeah, we're trying to see it.
It does look cool though.
Oh God, their personalities bounce off so well off each other, you know.
So I don't know if you noticed it, but when Nick Cage punched that guy, it said applesauce.
Yeah.
Apparently, that's a cuss word that was used like during his time. But like,
are you kidding
it
me?
was it's an actual cuss word that we used during I guess in what is it, World War II? He's fighting Nazis, right?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I love this right here.
Yeah.
I love how he just goes apeshit. You got a problem with cartoons, pal? Look at this.
Oh my God, I love that moment. He made him such a badass. And
right, look at this shit. Like, don't mess with the fucking cartoon. Damn. Oh God. And this should be, you know, because I think they established it is emotional, because this is all that Penny had left of her father, right?
Yeah.
The robot.
I actually missed that part first watching it, so I'm kind of like,
why is she crying?
yeah, like why should I care? So, but now knowing that it's it's pretty sad. Dang.
Yeah, that's the last thing she has left of her dad, so that's why she's like, I like your suit. That was adorable. Oh God, they work so well off each other, man. It's so great. I love how they all get like a punch at fucking Doc Ock. I love how they build up like her coming back.
Yeah.
And then she literally gets run over by a fucking truck.
I love his reaction. It's like, oh my God, no. And then everything he learned just comes together right here. Watch the hands. And then just the recreation of
what happened previously when they first met.
Peter Parker. It looks great. But
was that a dolphin sound?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just like, okay.
Yeah, I actually just noticed that. Or first time noticing it. Weird.
Me too. I was like, what the fuck did that come from?
Yeah.
Oh, this is actually kind of sad.
Mm-hmm.
Even the music like builds it up too.
Yeah. I love all their goodbyes here. It's so hilarious.
Yeah. I'm actually sad. This is coming to an end.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
I want to see more Nick Cage.
Yeah, I really do. I love how the fucking like spider jumps up. That really did feel anime. I love you. Oh my God. This is so funny. Oh my God.
It's so great.
can he legally say that? What the
Oh my god,
I was thinking the exact same thing. How did they get away with that?
Yeah.
Like, that's fucking Porky Pig from Warner Brothers Looney Tunes. They had to ask the permission to do that, right?
I'm pretty sure they did.
That's pretty iconic.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It feels like I don't know. I don't know though.
I mean, it's Porky Pig.
Yeah.
It's the Looney Tunes. I mean, they're not as, they're not mainstream anymore, but they're still like prolific as far as like, the history of all of pop culture is concerned. So it's like, people know what the Looney Tunes are, even though if they're not as popular today. Which, by the way, there's more Looney Tunes coming. A new Looney Tunes, I think, series of cartoons on HBO Max. So.
Oh yeah.
And then here, Miles intercedes and forces Peter to go back to his dimension.
Yeah.
And really, it's like Peter's like, yeah, I don't want to go back.
Yeah.
He almost like, he willingly, we kind of, glided past it. But like earlier, like he made the choice to basically die because he has like nothing to live for in some dark way. It's not outwardly said, but that's kind of the implication there. But then Miles gives him a reason to live again.
Yeah. It's just,
you gotta go home, man.
Yeah. It's just a great like full circle of this whole thing. And then
of course, I mean, the voice acting, come on. The voice acting is so great. Everything is so great. God, I can't stop gushing about this movie.
I know. I love this part right here just because, I think he says it, you're alone now or something like that. And it does intensify it. Like, oh, shoot, it's just him now. And, his Peter Parker got killed by Kingpin.
Yeah, there's a part, this is pretty, this right here. They both get on the train and, literally like history repeats itself for Kingpin because he's fighting Spider-Man on the train. And then I guess the alternate versions of Vanessa and Richard walk in on him again, beating up Spider-Man. And in the commentary track, by the way, you're seeing all the different like realities collide here, so it keeps like flickering back and forth. But in the commentary track, Phil Lord was saying that, this is just Kingpin failing to learn from his mistakes again and again and again. He's just caught in this loop.
That's dang.
Isn't that deep? Like, it's like shit. Like, you don't notice that shit.
Yeah.
I think it's right there the entire time.
God, they're so good. Like,
yeah. I mean, you can see why this won an Academy Award. I mean, for as much stock as you want to put Academy Awards these days, but that was well deserved.
Yeah, no, it still deserved Best Picture. I mean, everything that we talked about, from the acting, the character arcs, the animation. Like,
how amazing would that have been? This movie getting a Best Picture nomination.
Oh my god, just a nomination. Crap. Like, I don't mind if it didn't. Like, it should have won, but if it's just a nomination, it really showed. It would really. A
nomination is a win for an animated movie because there's only ever been like 3 that have been nominated for Best Picture. 2 from Pixar and 1 from Disney Animation. This is just wow.
That's Daredevil right there.
So many Ditko dots. Yeah, that's the fucking opening sequence of Daredevil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if they did that on purpose. Or no, actually, I don't think so. Just because I think they're using the red to make it intense and.
Yeah, it's red and black, and it's all closing in here. Oh, so Miles withstands the same attack that Peter Parker couldn't, which is interesting from the early on in the movie, because basically he gets his fist together and he fucking like beats the shit out of him, or the life out of him, but then Miles survives that.
Well, actually, Peter Parker already had like a building dropped on him by then.
That's right.
So
that's right, and a goblin basically.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure he was just a bit weak. He might be a bit stronger than him though too, just because there was that scene where they go to the lab and he punched a rock and it just like breaks in half. I don't know if you remember. So
yeah.
I don't know Peter Parker's strength, but he could be stronger.
It could be. Yeah. I mean, he does have a different power set, of course. The lightning and the invisibility. So I think an implication certainly could be that he is technically stronger than Peter Parker was.
Yeah.
In this movie.
I also like how...
Get out, Spider-Man! Get out, Spider-Man! You think of the fucking Homecoming thing.
Yeah. I also like how they didn't use his powers much, like the invisibility and the lightning.
I love it. Yeah. I love it. Yes. You know, it didn't even occur to me until you mentioned it, but yeah, they could have easily like gone all the way. Like they could have gone all X-Men with him, right? With all the damn like the until like now, right? But like it's very. They don't blow their load, basically. Yeah. You know, like it's very much used for big moments like this.
And I mean, I don't know how it's used in the comics, but they could have easily just been like, he shoots lightning like with the flick of his wrist at someone or something. Right. But no, they just kept it at a minimum. I love the music in this part right here.
Yeah.
Especially because like it kind of like intensifies more and more, and he sees the whole multiverse basically in his eyes. Oh, it's such a great scene.
Like this movie is so good that if the same people come back and do a sequel, I honestly might get so excited for that.
Oh my gosh, what can they do though? Like
I don't know, but I mean, if anybody could do it, it's them, right? I mean, I never thought like, I mean, what do you do for a Knives Out 2? Well, that Knives Out didn't already. I mean, you can do another setting, right? But like, how could it be as good as the first?
True.
Who could do it? Rian Johnson could probably, solve that. So sometimes it has to be just given in the right hands for it to be workable. But we'll see. I mean, yeah, it is hard to see a sequel living up to this, right? But however rare it is, it's been done before, and it could be done again.
Well, I mean, it's what happened with Lego Movie,
Yeah.
So it was almost impossible to live up to the first one, and the second one, I think we both agreed it was fine.
I almost see the second movie as a third movie because I include Lego Batman.
That's right. Yeah.
And I really do like Lego Batman. So yeah, Lego Movie 2 was okay, good, but really weak compared to the other two movies. Yeah. But Lord and Miller didn't necessarily return for that film. They didn't direct the movie.
But they are doing Spider-Verse 2?
I can't answer that question because I don't know.
Yeah.
And theoretically speaking, we probably won't know because, COVID-19.
Yeah.
So it'll be a while before we even see the damn thing. Unfortunately. I love this right here, like that Miles is like so excited and heartened when his dad like says maybe we could like go to some place and I can let you graffiti it, and like he runs to him basically and hugs him and all that and tells him that he loves him as Spider-Man. Like look how moved he is by that.
I love it. It's like see you later, officer.
He wants to cry. It's like, oh my god, like holy shit, I gotta go.
I love how he pops up though too. Oh, right there he said C-Mobile. I think it's supposed to be T-Mobile.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Again, just
that's
little
funny.
changes.
Little touches like that. Yeah. I love this. I look forward to working with What is he supposed to, like, a typical New Yorker accent? Like, what is...
I don't know.
That is interesting. I love how, he, like, I love you, and then he's like, what?
I feel like the dad's gonna find out, probably in the second one.
That would be good.
Yeah. Especially if he keeps, like, putting his own art
style. Oh, David, David, I can't let this go, because there was something I should have mentioned earlier on with that, that big scene we mentioned with the dad coming over to talk to Miles when he's tied up in the chair. That nearly didn't happen like that. You know what was so drastically different about it?
What?
It was actually Sony studio president Tom Rothman who suggested that that'd be the dad. But originally, the writers had not the dad come talk to Miles, but it was Aunt May. And Tom Rothman said to them, it should have been the dad because it doesn't feel it. The emotional weight just does not equal what I mean. It's nice coming from Aunt May, but Aunt May is not someone significant to Miles.
Yeah.
So it might have been one of those different things where like that might have been maybe more potent for the audience, but not for the character, which is that's a theme we talked about in yesterday's recording of the Rise of Skywalker audio commentary. You were saying? I'm sorry?
No, I was gonna say, like, I really like what they did with Aunt May and having her be waiting in the lab, because I feel like because she knew he was coming, and I always thought, how does she know? And my first thought was, I think she just trusts her Peter Parker in that he believed in him, so she'll believe in him. Yeah. This song again.
It's just like I think that may be my favorite scene in the movie, that both of you and I shared that moment, and it's like it's crazy to think that almost didn't happen.
Oh my god, that's insane,
isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of the good times the studio medals.
Right? Yeah, you hope though that's a sign that Sony is changing, because one of the things that and this gets into a little bit more of film politics, but like what I have noticed is in the last 2 years, the quality of Sony movies has been improving. Like they got Quentin Tarantino. So Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was a Sony film. Little Women was released by Sony.
Oh.
So it's like, yeah, there's a lot of they're at a point where they're beginning to release some actual good shit. Whereas like for a long time, all they released was shit. So it's a nice change of pace.
Yeah.
And we should know, I mean, Phil Lord, who wrote and directed this, and then Chris Miller, who also was his main partner in co-writing and directing movies, and also, but in this case, he was producing only. Like, they've done such great, like, they're the homeboys for Sony. Like, all the stuff, like, you think of, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, 21, 22 Jump Street, and now this Lego Movie was with Warner Brothers, but yeah, it's just like it almost makes me just, what the fuck was Kathy Kennedy thinking firing those guys? Like, yeah, like God, I know. I understand that maybe that Lord and Miller were not making the movie that they originally agreed upon, but like when you look at the track record of those two, everything they make turns to gold, is what I said. Like, but except Solo, because they were fired and then the film was reshot, and I wonder why. Like, oh my god!
Yeah.
Like,
I think it was just the pressure for her, and like I'm sure she just keeps hearing over and over, like, this isn't Star Wars, this isn't Star Wars, and now she's hearing it clashed.
From what I understand, Lord and Miller, their personalities clashed with Lawrence Kasdan, who is Star Wars royalty, because Kasdan wrote screenplays to Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, Indiana Jones, and Force Awakens, and of course Solo, which, like, the people who, like, it was interesting, right? Because I think what Lord and Miller were not in charge of writing the movie. It was Lawrence Kasdan and his son who were the writers. And I think what was happening is that Lawrence Kasdan was especially pissed because Lord and Miller would basically just do improvisational changes on the set, which they must have been pretty drastic, and that's pretty normal for any movie to do. I mean, it doesn't have to be entirely faithful to the page. Like, there are a lot of, commentaries that I've listened to with directors who've actually been very open. Real superhero, because that is the right thing to do. And R.I.P. Stanley. It was an interesting situation, and I really do wonder what the real occasion was. But like, I think what everything that we've seen suggests is that a Solo film that was directed by Lord and Miller would have been great.
And I said this before, I think you can see the differences between their direction and the new directors, just because I feel like there's
and who?
I don't know who the other director who replaced
Ron
him.
Howard?
Ron Howard?
The one they replaced him with?
Yeah. I feel like you could see the differences because there's parts that were just great action scenes and great acting moments, really, for me. I feel like that was them. Because I like the beginning. I really like the beginning of the movie with like chase scene. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that was them.
It might have been, yeah. It's just like, and we don't want to turn this into a review of Solo, obviously. We have a commentary on that going up soon. But it's, Alden Ehrenreich was so underrated in that role. I actually liked him as Han Solo, and I feel like if they had the direction of Lord Miller, that would have been something, I don't know. It's just a mystery, that movie, and what it ended up being. But they were vindicated because guess who won an Oscar and who didn't? After that mess happened.
Oh my god. They should get another hashtag going of the Lord and Miller cut of Solo.
The Lord. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Kathy burned those film strips. Because they reshot the film, I think, completely. I mean, not entirely. Yeah. Some stuff that Lord Miller shot remained in the movie, but like the reshoots were far more extensive than people originally thought when they were first announced. One of the big things that was just great was when it was announced that Benioff and Weiss from Game of Thrones were no longer working on the Star Wars trilogy that they were, supposed to be developing. I think it was Phil Lord that tweeted, "Yep."
Oh man.
Oh boy. I love those stories. Like, just like there's some juicy stuff going on there that I really want to like pull the string on and see like what happened. But yeah, as far as this movie's concerned, a genuine surprise. Just a beautiful movie, a great movie in every single aspect of what it was made for, and the kind of superhero film that I really wish we would get more of. To me, it rivals the best Spider-Man movie, and it is without question one of the best films of the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm. No, I honestly think this is like a perfect movie. Just I can't say anything wrong with it. If anyone does dislike it, what the fuck is wrong with you?
I mean, that's how universally loved it is, though. I mean, it's yeah, and I mean, everybody on our team loves this fucking movie. One of the things I should mention before we close is, I think more so than Homecoming, and definitely Far From Home, is the soundtrack. Like, what I really do love about the original Raimi trilogy, they all had great soundtracks. And this kind of, lives up to that. Like, this has an amazing soundtrack. Like, all of the songs that were used in pushing the story forward in the movie. Not just Sunflower, but other songs like, Mi Familia, Memories, Invincible, Elevate, Hello Dark, not Hello, I mean, Hello Danger, whatever it was.
What's Up Danger?
There's so many, What's Up Danger, yes. Just wonderful soundtrack that is just so like simpatico with the DNA of this movie. Like the score and the soundtrack really do, no pun intended, elevate just the damn like style of this movie and the pace of the movie. Really, it's just like all of the departments just coming together to make a work of art. And it's really hard to criticize and take issue with just about anything in this movie. I think the only thing that we had maybe a semblance of an issue with is that at times in our original viewings of the film, that there were, in the third act especially, that there were moments that maybe it went too far, and like because there were moments where we couldn't tell what the fuck was going on.
Yeah,
maybe there, but an amazing movie.
It was still entertaining. The third act. Yeah. So it's more of a nitpick, if we had to say.
Yeah, if anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But good for Sony. Good for Sony Animation.
Good for Spider-Man.
God, what a game changer! It really is. And you only do hope that this is the beginning of a new era, right? Not just like a one-off in the sense that, and not just for this franchise, but like, as far as like superhero movies, right?
I mean, yeah. I mean, you got this one, and you also got Joker. I mean, I know you have your complaints about it, but
Joker was no, but I mean, what you were saying?
Well, like just to sort of like let other studios, push the way they tell their stories, not just like, hey, let's make a big action set piece right here. Like, no, just keep it. You can keep it. Like, just keep it low. Like I said, Kingpin's whole, even though he's basically destroying the whole multiverse, his thing was just he wanted his family back. You don't need to destroy the whole world.
Right, like, just but the template is definitely there. It's, I mean, I agree with you. Like, I don't care for Joker all that much, but I think the concept of what that movie did is what I want to see more of, in terms of taking certain comic characters and doing just something different and interesting with it. And I think what Joker is, I feel, is the template for what other movies can do going forward, as well as into the Spider-Verse. So that's where I'm hopeful. This next decade. What is this?
What, that?
Yes.
Oh, just there after credit scene, I guess. I don't know if it's like a possible
tag for the next movie or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
But what is this supposed to be? It's a different Spider-Man or some sort?
Yeah, it's who's voicing him? Oh, it's Poe, isn't it? That does the voice.
Oscar Isaac?
I think so.
Let me see. Yeah, it is Oscar. That's Poe.
Yeah. So I think it's just to add one last joke and one last reference to past Spider-Man stuff. Because you get this.
This fucking meme. I'm from. What is this, man? This is just.
Oh my god, that's great.
Yeah, all those things and more. A film that gets better with every single viewing.
Yeah.
If you're out there, listen to, just watch the movie, watch it again for the rest of your life.
Yes.
That's all I gotta say. Any last thoughts, David?
I also would like to see the other studios take in this type of animation. I would love to see a Batman Beyond in this
Except they can't anymore.
I know.
Except they can't. I mean, that's one of the weird things is that where they all drop the ball is where Disney was the first, I think, to use this animation with one of their short films. However, once Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse went all big and everything, as far as its success, Sony was like, fuck you.
Yeah.
We're trademarking that shit. So it's exclusively Sony's now.
I say take a chance and just get some extra cash and do it. Because again, a Batman Beyond with that style of animation, it would work perfectly.
Yes. Yeah. Anything else?
No, that's it. That's all I want to say.
Well, with that, thank you, David. I really am happy with how this commentary turned out. You really brought a lot of great insight to the film, and my love for it has only grown as a result through all of this. And thank you all for listening. We have more commentaries coming at your way. Endgame, Infinity War, Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker, so many others. Thank you all for listening. Stay under the spotlight, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.